Let me ask you a question. Have you ever found yourself in the middle of chaos, an argument, a conflict, a stressful moment, and thought, why can't I just stay calm? If you're like most people, the answer is yes. Because the truth is, peace isn't something we stumble upon. It's something we create intentionally, consistently, and with discipline. Peace isn't about the absence of noise. It's about clarity in the middle of noise. It's not about walking away from problems. It's about knowing who you are when problems try to walk into your mind. So let's explore something powerful today, the secret to staying peaceful in any situation. The first secret is understanding control, specifically what you can and cannot control. Most people get angry or anxious because they try to influence things outside their power, other people's behavior, unexpected outcomes, or future uncertainty. The key is to train your mind to recognize, is this mine to carry? If not, let it go. This doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care wisely. You save your energy for what you can change, your attitude, your words, your responses. The second secret is training your pause. The greatest power we have is the ability to pause, not to react instantly, but to reflect even for a few seconds. When someone offends you, when life throws you a curveball, that pause allows you to respond with intention, not impulse. It's in the pause where wisdom lives. Anyone can react. Leaders, calm, clear leaders, respond. Now, here's something many overlook. Peace comes from preparation, not the moment. You don't stay peaceful in chaos by accident. You stay peaceful because you've trained for it in the quiet. Morning habits, mindfulness, journaling, a short walk without your phone. These are not luxuries. They're weapons of clarity. They help you reset your emotional balance before the world gets a chance to disrupt it. The fourth truth is this: you cannot be at peace with the world if you are at war with yourself. That inner dialogue you have, how you talk to yourself, matters more than anything anyone else says to you. If your inner voice is critical, harsh, and impatient, then peace will always feel like a distant goal. But if that voice becomes your coach, your guide, reminding you that you're allowed to be human, that you're learning, that you're growing, peace starts to show up. And finally, peace is not a feeling, it's a decision. You don't wait to feel peaceful. You choose it over and over again. In the middle of misunderstandings, you choose calm over proving your point. In the face of disappointment, you choose learning over blaming. In difficult conversations, you choose to listen before reacting. These small, powerful choices build emotional strength, like training a muscle. And the more you choose peace, the more natural it becomes. So the secret, it's not one big thing. It's a pattern of small decisions practiced with self-awareness, repeated in stillness, and refined through failure. Peace isn't passive, it's active. It takes courage to stay calm when everything in you wants to fight, to prove, to win. But the most powerful person in the room is never the loudest. It's the one who doesn't need to be. Fifth keynotes of the speech. Peace begins with understanding what you can control and releasing what you cannot, allowing your energy to be directed where it truly matters. The pause between stimulus and response is where peace is created. This space allows you to respond with intention rather than react with emotion. Daily personal habits like mindfulness, reflection, and intentional silence are foundational to staying peaceful during chaos. Internal peace comes from self-acceptance and a compassionate inner voice, not from the approval or calmness of external circumstances. Peace is a conscious decision, practiced daily through small acts of emotional discipline, not a random feeling you hope to experience. Peace begins with understanding what you can control and releasing what you cannot, allowing your energy to be directed where it truly matters. This idea sounds simple in theory, but in practice, it requires a shift in perspective that most people never take the time to develop. Human beings are wired for survival, and with that comes a natural desire to manage everything around us, to make people behave the way we want, to anticipate and avoid problems, and to predict the future so we can feel safe. But life rarely moves in a straight line, and the world doesn't operate according to our expectations. That's where frustration, anxiety, and emotional instability creep in. When something doesn't go our way, a delayed flight, a rude comment, a plan that falls apart, our minds tend to go into overdrive trying to fix, analyze, or blame. The emotional energy we spend trying to control the uncontrollable often leads us straight into stress and disconnection. The irony is, the more we try to control everything, the less control we actually feel. And that's the trap. People think control is power, but true power lies in knowing when to surrender. Imagine holding a rope tightly with both hands while someone pulls on the other end. The harder you grip, the more tension you feel. But what happens when you let go? The tension disappears. Not because the other person stopped pulling, but because you made a decision, this isn't mine to hold. That metaphor applies to so many situations in our lives. We hold on to outcomes, to people's opinions, to past mistakes, to future worries. And in doing so, we block ourselves from the peace we claim to want. Now, letting go doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean apathy or carelessness. Letting go means realigning your focus with what is truly in your hands. You cannot control whether someone likes you. You cannot control whether the weather ruins your plans. You cannot control whether someone understands your point of view. But you can control how you respond. You can control your attitude, your preparation, your patience, and your actions. That is where your power lies. Most conflict arises when people believe they can control each other. Think about the last time you argued with someone. Chances are, it wasn't just about the topic. It was about being heard, about being right, about getting the other person to see things your way. But if we recognize that we are only in charge of our half of the conversation, the emotional load shifts. We stop trying to win and we start trying to understand. That small shift in focus can instantly reduce tension because we stop fighting battles we were never meant to fight. There's also another layer to this: expectations. Much of our peace is stolen by the gap between our expectations and reality. We expect people to treat us a certain way. We expect life to unfold on our timeline. When those expectations aren't met, we feel betrayed or disappointed. But what if we adjusted the lens? What if, instead of expecting certainty, we learned to work with uncertainty? What if we saw unexpected moments as part of the process rather than signs of failure? That doesn't mean we lower our standards. It means we become flexible in our thinking. Rigidity breaks under pressure, flexibility bends and survives. Emotional maturity is learning to direct our focus toward what we can actually influence. It's easy to get distracted by noise, opinions, drama, or fear of what might go wrong. But every time we choose to redirect our attention toward our actions, our discipline, our communication, our values, we build emotional strength. It's like training a muscle. The more you practice letting go of what doesn't serve you, the stronger your ability to stay grounded in what does. There's an inner calm that comes when you no longer need everything around you to be calm in order to feel okay. That calm doesn't show up by accident. It's the result of inner discipline, of repeatedly telling yourself, this is out of my control, but I am not. You will never be able to control every situation, but you can always control the story you tell yourself about it. That story is the difference between chaos and clarity, between reacting in fear and responding with purpose. So when the world feels overwhelming, when people disappoint you, when life shifts in ways you didn't expect, ask yourself the most important question: is this within my control? If the answer is no, breathe, release, and move forward. Because peace doesn't come from changing the world. It comes from mastering how you move through it. The pause between stimulus and response is where peace is created. This space allows you to respond with intention rather than react with emotion. In the fast pace of everyday life, this idea might sound too subtle to make a difference, but it's in that small, often invisible moment of pause that everything can change. Most people are conditioned to react instantly to situations. Someone says something offensive and we snap back. Something doesn't go as planned and we panic or complain. Our emotions rise and we let them dictate our actions without taking even a breath to consider what's really happening. This pattern of immediate reaction creates a cycle of stress, misunderstanding, and regret. How many times have we said or done something in a heated moment that we later wish we could take back? The reason is simple: when we react without pausing, we are allowing our primitive brain, our fight or flight response, to take over. In that state, we're not using the part of our brain responsible for logic, empathy, or long-term thinking. We're simply trying to defend ourselves, to win, or to survive a perceived threat, even if the threat is just someone disagreeing with us. That's where the pause becomes powerful. The pause is not weakness. It's not passivity. It's not indecision. It is active restraint. It is the skill of stopping, even for a few seconds, to ask yourself, what's really going on here? What's the outcome I actually want? Will this reaction bring me closer to peace or further from it? These questions don't require long meditations. They require the discipline to create even a moment of space between what happens and what you do next. Developing the pause means retraining your emotional habits. It's a kind of mental conditioning. It begins by becoming aware of your own triggers. The moments when you usually lose control, raise your voice, shut down, or act impulsively. Once you start noticing those patterns, you can start preparing for them. Instead of waiting for the next argument to test your patience, you build the pause into your daily habits. You practice it in small things: a delayed reply to a frustrating email, taking a breath before answering a question you don't like, counting to 3 when someone interrupts you. These small practices build your emotional muscles. It's also important to understand that the pause doesn't suppress emotions, it clarifies them. Emotions are not the enemy. They're signals, data points telling you what matters to you, what feels off, where your values are being challenged. But when you don't give those emotions space, they run wild and override your judgment. The pause gives you a chance to hear what your emotions are trying to say without being ruled by them. Anger might be pointing to a boundary that's being crossed. Sadness might be revealing something that needs healing. Frustration might be showing you a misalignment between your efforts and your results. But only with a pause can you decode that message. This practice is especially critical in relationships, both personal and professional. Communication is not just about the words we speak, it's about timing, tone, and presence. A reactive response often escalates conflict, even if your point is valid. But a pause, just a few seconds of silence, signals control, respect, and intention. It tells the other person, I am here and I am choosing how I respond. That choice changes the dynamic. It calms the room. It invites others to mirror your calm rather than feed off your tension. And the truth is, most of what disturbs our peace is not the situation itself, but the meaning we attach to it. Someone being short with you doesn't have to mean they're disrespecting you. It might mean they're overwhelmed. A change in plans doesn't have to mean failure. It might be an opportunity to adapt. But you can only reinterpret the situation if you give yourself space to think. That space, the pause, is your opportunity to choose a better story, one that serves peace instead of feeding conflict. Over time, this ability to pause becomes part of who you are. It no longer feels like effort. It becomes your default setting. People will begin to notice that you don't get rattled easily, that you don't rush to judgment, that your presence brings a certain calm. But that calm is not luck. It's not a personality trait. It's the result of practiced intention. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you reclaim your peace. You take control of your emotional environment, and you show yourself and others that you are not a prisoner of circumstance, but a creative response. Daily personal habits like mindfulness, reflection, and intentional silence are foundational to staying peaceful during chaos. Peace does not appear randomly in our lives. It is not a surprise guest that shows up when everything goes well. It is built slowly and deliberately in the quiet moments we often overlook. The people who seem calm during high-pressure situations are not simply lucky or born that way. They have trained for it. They have created routines and habits that prepare their minds and emotions to stay grounded when life becomes unpredictable. And that preparation doesn't happen in the heat of the moment. It happens long before the storm arrives. Imagine your mind as a garden. Whatever you plant in it regularly will grow. If you plant anger, fear, and distraction every day through noise, stress, and negativity, that is what your mind will produce. But if you plant presence, clarity, and stillness through even just a few minutes of mindfulness or journaling, your inner world becomes a place where peace can take root. That is what daily personal habits allow us to do. They are not about perfection. They are about creating space every day where your mind can breathe and your emotions can be observed instead of reacted to. Mindfulness doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as sitting still for 5 minutes with your phone turned off. It can be walking without earbuds, just paying attention to your breath and your footsteps. It's not about clearing your mind completely. It's about noticing what's in it. When you do that regularly, you begin to understand the patterns of your own thoughts. You become less surprised by your emotions, less thrown off by unexpected reactions, and more equipped to choose your response when something challenging happens. Reflection is another powerful habit. It allows you to make sense of your day, your behavior, and your experiences. Taking time at the end of the day to ask yourself a few simple questions. What went well today? Where did I lose my peace? What triggered me? What did I learn about myself? Helps you process emotions that might otherwise get buried and explode later. Reflection builds self-awareness, and self-awareness is the foundation of peace. You cannot master what you don't understand, and you cannot respond wisely to situations you haven't taken time to think about. Silence is often overlooked, but it may be one of the most powerful tools for peace. We live in a world full of constant noise, notifications, conversations, traffic, media. Most people are so used to the noise that silence feels uncomfortable. But silence is where clarity begins. It's in silence that your mind has the chance to reset, to stop reacting and start noticing. Creating moments of intentional silence, whether it's 5 minutes in the morning, a break in the middle of the day, or screen-free evenings, helps detox your mental space. It teaches you that peace doesn't come from distraction or entertainment, it comes from presence. Consistency is key. One mindful moment will not change your life, just like one workout won't make you healthy. But doing it daily, even for short periods, compounds over time. It creates a baseline of calm. When you start your day with stillness or end it with reflection, you're giving your nervous system a message. I'm safe. I'm in control. I choose peace. That message becomes your emotional baseline. Then when life throws something unexpected at you, your response is different, not because the situation is easier, but because you are more prepared. People often wait for their lives to slow down so they can find peace. But peace is not found in the absence of problems. It is found in the strength of your internal habits. You bring your peace with you into the storm, not because you're unaffected, but because you've trained yourself to remain steady. And that training comes from showing up every day for yourself, even when it feels small or unimportant. There will be days when you feel rushed, when nothing goes according to plan, when you feel disconnected. That's when habits matter most. When you return to your practices, not out of guilt, but out of commitment, you are anchoring yourself. You are reminding yourself that peace is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is something you invest in, just like your health or your relationships. Daily personal habits are not about avoiding stress. They are about preparing for it. They are the quiet disciplines that help you become the kind of person who can stay calm in conflict, focused in pressure, and hopeful in uncertainty. Peace is not built in chaos, it is built in consistency. And it is your daily choices, not random luck, that determine how strong that peace becomes. Internal peace comes from self-acceptance and a compassionate inner voice, not from the approval or calmness of external circumstances. So many people are searching for peace outside themselves. They think if people would just treat them better, if work was less stressful, if their relationships were easier, then they'd finally feel calm inside. But that's a fragile form of peace. It's conditional, unstable, and always one step away from being shattered. True peace doesn't come from how quiet your surroundings are. It comes from how quiet your mind is when things go wrong. And that quietness of mind is only possible when you are not constantly fighting with yourself. Most of us were never taught how to speak to ourselves with kindness. From an early age, we learned to be our harshest critics. We grew up believing that if we were just hard enough on ourselves, we'd stay motivated, we'd avoid mistakes, and we'd finally become good enough. But what that kind of self-talk really does is create a war inside. You start to doubt your decisions, second guess your worth, and feel like you're never doing enough, no matter how much you achieve. And when that voice is already loud inside you, every little stress from the outside world feels 10 times heavier. It doesn't take much to throw you off because you're already unbalanced internally. Changing that starts with recognizing that you are allowed to be human. You're allowed to make mistakes, to not have all the answers, to feel tired, confused, or disappointed sometimes. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. Self-acceptance is not about lowering your standards or giving up on growth. It's about starting from a place of truth instead of shame. When you accept where you are, you can finally begin to grow in a healthy direction. You don't need to punish yourself to improve. You need to understand yourself. A compassionate inner voice does not excuse poor behavior, but it does create the space to learn from it instead of getting stuck in guilt or self-hatred. For example, if you said something you regret, beating yourself up might seem like the responsible thing to do. But in reality, it closes the door on learning. A kinder inner voice would say, that didn't reflect who I want to be, but I understand why it happened. Let's figure out how to do better next time. That shift might sound subtle, but it makes all the difference. It turns your inner world from a courtroom into a classroom. When your relationship with yourself is grounded in kindness and curiosity instead of judgment and pressure, your emotions become easier to navigate. You no longer spiral as easily when things go wrong. You have a baseline of inner support, a place to return to that doesn't depend on how others treat you or how perfect your circumstances are. That inner stability allows you to face challenges with greater resilience because your worth isn't on the line every time something uncomfortable happens. This kind of internal peace doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice, especially if you've spent years listening to a critical inner voice. It might begin with small things, catching yourself when your thoughts become too negative, reminding yourself of something you did well today, giving yourself permission to rest without guilt. These little acts of compassion start to rewire the way you relate to yourself. Over time, your default response to stress becomes more grounded, more centered, because you're no longer fighting yourself while trying to manage the world. And here's the powerful part. When you begin to treat yourself with more compassion, you also become more peaceful in how you treat others. You're less reactive, less defensive, and more empathetic because you're no longer projecting your inner chaos onto those around you. You no longer need everyone else to behave perfectly just so you can feel okay. That's a quiet kind of strength, the kind that doesn't demand, doesn't chase, doesn't need constant validation. It's the kind of strength that allows you to sit in the middle of uncertainty and still feel steady because you've made peace with the one person you'll never escape, yourself. You become someone who doesn't need to shout to feel heard, who doesn't need to prove their worth in every conversation, who doesn't panic when things go off script. Not because life is easier, but because your internal world is no longer a battlefield. You carry a kind of peace that doesn't depend on approval or applause. And that peace, rooted in self-acceptance and compassion, becomes your greatest source of clarity in the chaos. Peace is a conscious decision, practiced daily through small acts of emotional discipline, not a random feeling you hope to experience. Many people treat peace as if it's something that just happens when everything around them settles down. They wait for the perfect day, the right environment, the absence of conflict, or the approval of others to feel at ease. But the reality is that peace doesn't wait for you. You have to go after it. You have to choose it, sometimes multiple times a day. And more than that, you have to build it with habits, with awareness, and with deliberate emotional control. Choosing peace is often harder than reacting with emotion. When someone disrespects you, it feels easier to snap back. When a plan falls apart, it feels natural to complain. When the pressure builds, your instinct might be to escape, shut down, or lash out. But each of those reactions, while understandable, pulls you away from peace. They give away your power to whoever triggered you. Choosing peace means holding onto that power. It means deciding, even when it's hard, that you will not let your mood be dictated by chaos, criticism, or disappointment. Emotional discipline is the heart of this decision. It's not about suppressing how you feel or pretending to be calm when you're not. It's about learning to feel your emotions without letting them control your actions. It's about creating a pause between how you feel and what you do next. And that pause is where the decision for peace lies. That decision doesn't always feel good in the moment. Sometimes it means walking away from an argument you want to win. Sometimes it means admitting you were wrong even when your pride tells you not to. Sometimes it means staying quiet when everything in you wants to speak. Those are the small acts of discipline that build a strong foundation for peace. Peace doesn't mean everything is easy. It means you've developed the tools to handle what's difficult without losing yourself in the process. You don't become peaceful because life becomes easier. You become peaceful because you've trained your mind to respond differently to difficulty. And that training happens through repetition. Every time you make the hard choice to stay grounded instead of reactive, you're teaching your brain a new way to operate. You're building emotional resilience one moment at a time. Many people want to feel calm but aren't willing to give up the habits that create internal chaos. They cling to drama, to judgment, to perfectionism, to control. They feed the very mindset that keeps peace away. Choosing peace means letting go of those things. It means learning to say no, not just to people or our obligations, but to thoughts and behaviors that no longer serve you. It means learning to set boundaries, not just to protect your time, but to protect your energy. It means stopping yourself when your thoughts spiral and asking, is this helping me stay at peace or pulling me away from it? There's a kind of quiet power that comes from being intentional about how you think, speak, and respond. When you practice peace as a daily discipline, you begin to notice how much more energy you have. You're no longer drained by constant overthinking, unnecessary conflict, or emotional outbursts. You begin to feel lighter. Not because your life is perfect, but because your mindset is no longer working against you. That peace becomes a lens through which you see everything. Challenges become manageable. Annoyances become opportunities for patience. People's opinions become less heavy. You no longer need everything around you to be perfect in order to feel okay inside. But this decision to choose peace is not something you make once and forget about. It's a decision you have to renew every day, sometimes every hour. When you wake up in the morning and your mind wants to jump to stress, you choose peace. When your plans shift unexpectedly, you choose peace. When someone pushes your buttons, you choose peace. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Because you've decided that protecting your peace is more important than proving a point, winning an argument, or getting immediate satisfaction. It's easy to think that peace is a passive thing, something that happens when we finally escape the noise. But peace is active. It's a mental choice. It's a pattern of behavior. It's the discipline of protecting your thoughts, your energy, and your reactions. And over time, those small daily decisions accumulate. They shape who you are and how you show up in the world. You don't wait for peace to come to you. You create it moment by moment, choice by choice, breath by breath. That's the kind of peace that can't be shaken. That's the kind of peace that lasts. The secret to staying peaceful in any situation is not hidden in some unreachable place. It's built through small, daily, intentional choices. Peace doesn't come from controlling the world around you. It comes from mastering the world within you. When you stop chasing control and start focusing on your response, when you train yourself to pause instead of react, when you build consistent habits that nourish your mind, when you speak to yourself with compassion instead of criticism, and when you make the deliberate decision to choose peace again and again, even when it's hard, that's when peace becomes part of who you are. It's not about escaping chaos. It's about becoming someone who can walk through it without losing clarity, presence, or purpose. Peace is not a reward. It's a responsibility. And the more you practice it, the more powerful and grounded you become, no matter what life throws your way.